Hey, it is April the 6th, 2020, and I'm going to take my time and ease into this here broadcast. Only moments ago, I had to restart my whole system because, we failed to connect. Failed to connect. I really appreciate those terms coming from Google or the internet. I don't know who said it, but they said I failed to connect. It's like, dude, I did everything the same way I do every time. All right, so I don't know about calling me a failure, but I'm not sure right now. I think if I speak slower, then I might be able to maintain being on the internet. Maybe if I don't use too much words, um, the internet will be cool with me being on live. And I hope it will be because, I'm not going to attempt much further. I see there's somebody up in the building. And I appreciate you. I wonder if you saw that I tried to get online. I was trying to be on live only moments ago, right? Um, didn't work. And it might not be working right now. Could be talking to myself. That's one of the risks. That's one of the hazards of the job. But it's a job that somebody's got to do, all right? Okay, because the thing is, actually, we got some stuff that we need to talk about that I at least need to mention, and I'm sure that there's some things out there that y'all could direct me towards because that is typically how this works. But there are some things that I do think that we need to talk about, some very crucial things. Number one, first one, and just to give you a rundown of what we're going to go through. Some of these things. Number one, what is the opposite? Who is the opposite? Who is the exact opposite? Who is the extreme bipolar opposite? That's the question of Donald Trump. All right, and I want to give y'all a little bit of time to think about that and bounce that around in your mind. Who would be the exact opposite? And I think I have an answer. I want to share it with y'all, and I think that's actually going to prove to be crucial in going forward. All right, in these desperate times that we found ourselves in, 2020. I want to talk about that. Of course, we're going to bring up these medical interventions like we have been bringing up and just continue to bring it up. These different various medical interventions that people be talking about in reference to this very mysterious disease that people may or may not be getting all over the place, dying from. And then we got a shout out because we'll probably talk about him before the end of this here show. And it's a doctor by the name of Cameron Kyle Seidel. And a lot of people have already heard about him. All right, you probably heard about him or at least saw his face. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about that New York City doctor who's said that, we're actually, hey, it's like, I don't know who he is, but he came and he made himself viral. Because that's the thing, a lot of people were sharing his stuff, this Cameron Kyle Slidell. If you haven't seen him, we're going to take a look at his face a little bit later, and you'll be able to find him on the internet. A lot of people have been talking about this guy, and I saw the first time I seen him being mentioned was actually from Dana Ashley. All right, when you consider Dana Ashley very popular, but also extremely real underground. I mean, and the fact is, like, who knows Dana Ashley? Besides from the people who know it. All right. I heard it first from her, and then I actually want to seen it on InfoWars a little bit later. All right, they don't always break stuff, but you see that when there's something juicy to talk about, oh, they'll find it out. All right, but it's not only them. A lot of people have been talking about it, so we're gonna bring it up. All right. In the meantime, let's just get a wherewithal to start off this session. Nothing too fancy, because I noticed that we're struggling to stay on the internet and failing to make connections. And yesterday we tried to do a surprise broadcast in which we wanted to play some video, and that wasn't gonna happen at all and stuff. So In the meantime, trust me, that's in the future, and we're gonna have split streaming. I've heard a lot about this thing called Zoom, an application called Zoom, in which everybody's talking about it. So real briefly, if you haven't heard of this application called Zoom, I'm not really familiar with it, but from what I've heard, it's where people do a lot of conference calls and stuff like that. And they've been saying, "Oh, you better be careful because people could be spying on you while you're in your Zoom and stuff." People at people's various work sites are like, "Hey, you better be careful because people could be listening to you on Zoom." It's like, hell yeah, people are listening to you. That's the whole point of Zoom, man. You see, they ain't selling your, oh man. And even if they weren't selling it, for sure it's gonna get hacked, and that's the whole point, probably. All right, but sometimes you just gotta have your conference calls, and man, you don't give a dang who sees it or what. You know what I'm saying? Maybe Zoom is a cool application. Maybe we could do that sort of stuff and implement a Zoom here on a live stream, or even just make a recording and for everybody to be privy to these sort of conversations because a lot of times we have conversations in private, for a reason. Sometimes we have them in private just because nobody's listening. All right. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but let's go ahead and start this broadcast on in a very simple, methodical way. All right. We're going to go to the screenshots, and it's going to give us a little bit of a taste. And we're going to talk about, what we got on the docket. Plus, we also got it'll remind us of some things. There's some outrageous things in these screenshots that I've yet to mention, or actually, some of this stuff we became familiar only with on yesterday's broadcast. All right, I took a screenshot of this. Not too important necessarily. It's actually local news from out of South Florida, around the Broward County area. So, deputies' death brings tensions to head between Broward County Sheriff and employees. And that's kind of interesting. And maybe it's not the most interesting, but I'll probably wind up looking into it. I'll let you know if there's any funny business. I don't know. Might be. Anyways, oh man, actually, we're gonna skip this one. Let's go to this. Okay, banning. I want to talk about this first. As I see, like I don't know if people are getting forced in and out of the building and stuff like that. I don't know if YouTube is bullying people, and muscling people out, or I don't know if people are wandering in and out. Either way, that's cool. And I appreciate you, man. And I look forward to talking with you in the future and stuff. Plus, if you leave a comment, and I would get down to the nitty gritty. All right, that much I can promise. All right, but in the meantime, there are a couple of things that we were mentioning earlier to include the problem of monkeys smoking. And trust me, we're gonna get down to the bottom of that. And that is a serious alleged problem. All right, we didn't make it up. But also, another issue is actually dealing with tanning. Now, this screenshot I took right here is of a story that was a month old, and it's actually talking about tanning beds, right? Which is not really what we're talking about right now, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Look, tanning beds, banning tanning beds. Geez, could prevent up to 10 million cases of skin cancer. And I don't know, that could very well be true. I don't know how popular it is, these tanning beds, especially even today. Like, I just don't know how popular it is. I gotta say, I know that tanning beds exist, and I've seen places and parlors where those would probably be implemented. I don't know how popular it is in Texas necessarily. We don't hardly need any tanning beds, really. Maybe some places out there they take advantage of that, and I don't know. But so some people get very addicted, as you might have well heard before, and certainly I've heard this and that about tanning beds. So, like I said, not very familiar. And this chance might get you cancer. It's like, well, everything about it is artificial. Number one, and very, very extreme. Kind of cooking yourself like you're under a heat lamp, like you're at a fast food chicken joint. And I don't know, that just sounds like it might be bad, right? And I just always figured, it just sounds like it would be bad. But some people like it, and they might have gotten skin cancer and stuff like that, and they're still trying to figure all that out. God bless them. I hope they do. But this is what we really wanted to talk about. This is just like an instance that we might get back to. Look, police an ambulance called, police and ambulance called. Two reports of two men lying unconscious in the park. That might sound intriguing to you, right? They were sunbathing despite the coronavirus lockdown. Now, we're going to get into that. Hold on. We're going to get into that more in a second. But let's see. This is how I wanted to introduce you, I guess. Something like this. Look here, if I go back, check this out. Now, this is going to be extremely crucial, all right? This might make you fighting mad. This might get you all riled up. If you were, say, Brenda from Unwrapped by Brenda out there, hypothetically, you would be wanting to punch someone in the nose. Just by just the idea of this, all right? But we're going to dive into it because you might not have heard. I know a lot of people aren't talking about this specifically. Of course, they'd probably mention it, but I want to talk about it specifically. Coronavirus, can sunbathing spread the virus, and should we ban outdoor exercise? Okay. Now, mind you, when it comes to exercise, I know a lot of people like to exercise with other people, right? And that's how they feel all motivated. A lot of people love to do that. I've seen that. I don't really care for it. I like to exercise by myself and just do my own damn thing, and I'll be off to myself and stuff. So I've seen people where their behavior might be a little bit risky, right? Perhaps. Okay, so I could see, like, just first of all, ain't nobody passing no laws around here. As far as the nation, as far as your local, if you're in America or maybe if you're all over the world, all over the flat earth, it's like you might be experiencing people saying, "This is the mandate, you guys. I dictate whether or not you should do this or that," and blah, blah, blah. So you're probably hearing a lot of that in your local news. All right. But none of it's really laws. That's what I got to stress. And so, like, when you implement them, it's like, yeah, I know there's like, it's like people messing around with what is and what isn't laws. And I think that's what's going to become very frustrating for some people. Now, as far as exercise, like I said, man, I do my own thing off to my lonesome, and I'm just not near anybody, right? So I'd be one to say, hey, look, I'm not near anybody. I don't know what the hell you think I'm spreading out here, right? And but some people, they might be tripping, slipping and tripping, and they might be all been like a groups of 20 and 30, just all trying to total 90 and stuff like that. And I can see how that might hamper people's idea of being cautious. Okay, so but with that being said, an even more extreme, I think, a scenario to point out is sunbathing. Is sunbathing. Now, you can go sunbathing in groups. And I would argue, even then, you're not exactly lying down all on top of each other. Not typically. I know sometimes to get romantic, maybe you might do that. And even still, if you're getting romantic on the beach, chances are you're getting romantic other places. So it really doesn't matter. You're gonna pass coronavirus back and forth. But typically people don't lie all over each other. So even in groups, he might be like, oh, they're just sunbathing. When you consider the action of sunbathing, typically it's the most still that you'll ever see a person throughout the day, just not hardly moving at all, looking like a little snail there on the beach and stuff, or wherever you're at in the park, not moving. I don't know what you're doing, reading maybe, breathing in and out like slowly. Maybe some people watch maybe a movie if you can, if the glare's not so bad, or maybe like you listen to some podcast or something like that. You're not hardly moving. That's typical. I don't know if people get down like that, but I do. I like to sunbathe. In fact, I got this one spot right now that's just not far away at all. It takes me like maybe 5 minutes to get there. Just walking, and nobody ever goes there. It's like the prime spot for to be sunbathing. I go there and nobody says a mumbling word to me, right? And I totally appreciate it, all right? Maybe I'm in a very fortunate place in regards to that nobody says anything to me. It's like, part of me wishes they would say something to me. Sunbathing now. As far as medical interventions, we're going to talk more about that a little bit more, even though we've talked about that before. I just want to make sure that everybody's heard that I at least brought it up. I'm not telling you what to do or what you should do, but Some people are bringing up some things that might prove to be crucial, right? See, the thing is about sunbathing, it's actually pretty dang good for you. A lot of people don't know, and they've been scared off because of things like tanning beds, I would imagine, and tanning salons and stuff like that. I would imagine people getting cancer. And also, you can go out in the sun, you can get you some cancer. I'm pretty sure of it. Especially in the Texas sun, it'll give you some cancer after a while. Unless you know how to. It's like, dude, people invented sombreros and all sort of other different things for a reason, and there's a reason why, like, just people don't go out between 2 and 4 o'clock. Sometimes, like when it gets to be the summertime, you just find yourself indoors, dude. Hey, there's air conditioning everywhere, and so don't get cancer and stuff. There's different ways around it. Is what I'm saying. Construction workers will wear like long sleeve shirts and stuff like that. There's all sort of bandanas around their necks. There's different various things you could do, but sunbathing is actually, and I think everybody knows it. In fact, I think everybody's known it since ancient times, to be honest. All right, I don't think it needs any more proof that sunbathing is good for you. It feels good after you done it. You continue to feel even better. The dang scientists with their lab coats went ahead and proved that it busts off all sort of vitamin D up in your body. And it's just real when you consider the fact is that you don't pay no money for it. It is very cheap and cost effective as far as you can get vitamin D supplements, but at the end of the day, it's very cheap to just go outside, sunbathe. All right. So without further ado, as you might expect, but I think you should see it with shocking horror. And perhaps for some people it'll be the end of the line. It'll be the last straw. Right? For some people out there. The fact is, somebody's out there sunbathing, even if they're in groups. Is it really that dangerous? Right? If they're not out there being spring break partygoers, or if they're at the park. Now, like, let's take a close look, dude. I mean, this is a timeless picture of absolute nonsense, right? And the picture does tell a million words. And you look at this guy, of course it would be this guy. Of course he would have his gut hanging out and stuff, being a little roly-poly, coming over, having nothing better to do. I mean, and I do believe this is in the UK, so it's like, oh, really? You have nothing better to do in the UK besides accost this lady in the park? Now, I mean, I don't know the context necessarily, but if I'm looking at this lady correctly in the park, if we just zoom in a little bit more, she looks to me like she's all by herself and just mind her own damn business. That's what it looks like, right? So the most extreme. That's the thing about it. It's like, how can you even get more extreme than this? To accost a lady in the park with your gut hanging out because you got nothing better to do, and tell her about the policies. Oh, we got a stay home, stay safe policy and stuff. You can't sunbathe. Meanwhile, sunbathing probably would be the number one, or I mean, it would be at least in the top 5 things that you would want to do right now to prevent the coronavirus. And I don't know if anybody debates that. I wonder if anybody's out there debating that right now against that. Like, oh no, there's no way that bathing in the sun would help you at all right now. So I wanted to draw attention to that, all right, and then show you that there's other stuff like this article, for example, as wild and crazy and wacky as it was, the headline might get you drawn in and say, oh man, can I even go sunbathe outside without being accosted? And then I wanted to go read the article just to see what the heck they was talking about, and it's behind a paywall, like some damn freaking losers, the Telegraph. I don't want to read your stupid article, but I'm gonna look into it more so you can look from the Telegraph, right? Wanting to do it behind a paywall. I'm sorry, I don't need your information. Let's see, different various things that come up, and I took screenshots of stuff like Let's check out these bullets. Understanding the death toll. Here's a bullet point. Can I go for a walk in the sunshine? I mean, why don't you just take that sentence and frame that and put it in everybody's household in the world? The words, can I go for a walk in the sunshine? Right? And if you find yourself ever saying that particular sentence to yourself, know for sure that you're knee deep up in a war and something bad's fixing to happen, right? And then what powers do the police have to fight the coronavirus? That's an interesting question. The answer to it, I venture, is no powers. No powers at all. No powers. None powers. They could do nothing. Literally nothing. Like, they're qualified to do nothing in the whole idea of this coronavirus. I mean, perhaps like first responders such as EMTs and medical professionals, yeah, they might have something that they could do to fight the coronavirus. A police can't do anything. Not anything. Right? What can they do? They can accost you in the park for sunbathing. That's what, that's what they could do. All right. So there were similar scenes in Primrose Hill and Camden where people, they were all jogging and stuff, looking like criminals. That's the thing. I also want to point out, with these masks, people are getting down with it. It's got to be a little bit harder to jog, but you know what? Then maybe that's a challenge, right? And so some people already did that sort of stuff to challenge their oxygen intake when running. So it's not totally new, but it's interesting. It says, look right up here, this paragraph, it says, it comes as Brockwell Park in Lambeth was forced to close on Sunday after more than 3,000 people spent the day there sunbathing or in large groups on Saturday. All right. So I don't know how big this park is, but apparently 3,000 people were slipping and tripping, doing as everybody's done throughout the ages, and going out, grabbing some cheap health from the sun, right? So Sky News, ironically, is talking about coronavirus. Follow lockdown rules, or we will ban outdoor exercise. So, like, just to drive it home, these people are tyrannical, and I think they think that they have more power than they do have, but they're just exercising what they can right now. Look, follow lockdown rules, or we will ban outdoor exercise. Health Secretary warns. And I found Mr. Hancock to be quite interesting. That's the health secretary. You can't really spell health right, but that's all right. He says that he doesn't want to further restrict people's freedom, but will if the rules are flouted. Wow, dude. I don't know if you could sound more like a Bond villain, or I don't know. That just sounds over the top. Is that a quote? Health Secretary Matt Hancock, look at spell now. Matt Hancock has criticized sunbathers. Sunbathers. It's over in the UK, if I understand correctly. Sunbathers. 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 For breaking lockdown rules, and warned the government will ban outdoor exercise if people continue to ignore the advice or to stay home. It's kind of like a situation that's much, much worse than even, say, V for Vendetta, if you remember that plot. Like, really dystopic and outlandish. All right. And I wanted to stress that that is taking place. All right. Like, police and ambulance, that's why we were looking at it earlier. Like, police and ambulance called two reports of two men lying unconscious in the park. Right? They were sunbathing despite the coronavirus lockdown. Like, just break it down and imagine it for a second, right? Because it sounds bad off the top, but just dwell upon it, okay? And imagine, you probably already figured by now, somebody had called the police or whatever, emergency assistance, called the police and say, look, I think two men are lying unconscious in the park, right? So then the police came out and found that they were sunbathing. Okay, so very easily what people all throughout history have done until now is perhaps called out to the sunbathers, maybe poke them with a stick if it's necessary. But before calling the police, everybody throughout history, before calling the police, has just called out to the people, say, hey, hi, are y'all doing all right? Okay, just checking on y'all, and that's it. That's all that they've ever done. Ever. No matter what. big and tall, small and fat and dumb and smart alike have all just done it the same way. Now they're calling police. Police have to come check on you because you might be unconscious. Imagine you were unconscious in the park and your life was at risk and something bad happened and someone needed to help you. Oh, well, I'll call the police, and they might check on them eventually. All right, so that's what brought us back to the banning, tanning, and stuff. And there was also a little screenshot of coronavirus live updates. Outdoor exercise could very well be banned. I don't know in what country they're talking about, but whatever country, 621 more die in blah, 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 whatever country. And so they might ban outdoor exercise. They might ban going out. I mean, if you're banning outdoor exercise, would you not be banning out being outdoors? Right, so it can't even be outdoors. It's not like I could go outdoors and just stand there, right? Like if I go outdoors and just stand there, that can't be acceptable, can it? And so it's like you're using terminology that it leaves even more to the imagination. If it wasn't already the worst possible thing that could be imagined, right? I was looking at and checking on one of my favorite characters out there. A lot of people hate on him, and that's all right. His name's Tekashi 69, and he just got out of jail. And I was looking at this one thing. It's funny because 69% of people liked it. You see that? Yeah, it's funny. Look, because Tekashi 69, he got out of jail, and everybody else is talking about it. So I'm not gonna really say very much about it. But a lot of prisoners coming up out of jail just to make a lot of room. A lot of room. Why? Well, it's to be safe for the coronavirus. Oh, okay, all right. So they're just gonna keep it half empty? No, not really. They can't wait to stuff you in there. If they catch you, maybe perhaps doing outdoor exercise, and they don't want you to stuff you in a jail. There'll be room for it. Let me point this out. First of all, there's a show called Tiger King out there. And I know nothing about it, but I've heard people talking about it all over the place. Enough to know that everybody's seen it and it's everybody's favorite thing, right? So I wanted to acknowledge it. And I'm not trying to be all snotty by saying that I don't know what the hell is going on. But also, look, screenshot, Tiger test positive for COVID-19 at Bronx Zoo. It's like, dude, all right, at this point, y'all are sick, dude. I don't even know what to say about this. Does anybody read this and say, oh no, this is even more of a problem? It's like, isn't this just bizarre? Who even tests this? Like, on a tiger, it's like, I thought you said the tests were costing all sort of money. I thought y'all I could have sworn you said the tests were costing all sort of money at one point. Until it seemed as though, Donald Trump went ahead and handled business and had people start to manufacture more and more of these tests. Beforehand, they were costing all sort of money. And so now y'all have so many tests out there that you're testing tigers. You're really testing tigers? How do you find out? How do you find this out? Testing a tiger just to do it. And then you find out that the tiger has it, right? And I've seen articles, and we probably don't have time to go through it right now, but I've seen articles, and you've probably seen articles out there about the spread of the corona. And the thing is, it might have always been ever changing or ever intensifying, in that they're like, oh, you can get it if you do this. Oh, I mean, you could get it if you do this, or even if you do this, or maybe if you do this. Like, to the point it's like, they were like, don't talk to people if you're within 6 feet of those people because they can get it. And it's like, damn, dude, within 6 feet, 6 feet. And they said, hey, actually, don't even breathe because if you breathe out, some people in the room might get it. It's like, damn, dude, through osmosis, people are getting it. And so they keep, I don't know. I don't know how much more they could really ramp it up, to be honest with you. Like, don't even think about your loved ones, even if they're somewhere, if they're in another state and you think about them, it's gonna put the shining on them, and they're gonna get it, right? Pretty much, they're gonna get it. Don't even think about them. So it's getting these tigers, right? These jungle beasts, and for some reason they got tested. Couldn't explain to you why that is, but all these pets are getting tested. For example, And it's been said that cats can give it to other cats, and you would imagine dogs could give it to other dogs. And this is probably the reason why I've seen a completely empty dog park across the way, right? For, I don't know, the past week or a couple weeks. The time is a blur. I'm not sure exactly. But everything gets ramped up, more ramped up. I don't know what's the local word actually in San Antonio, Texas, deep in the heart of Texas. I don't know what's the local word from the mayor. I'm sure he said something today, but I haven't looked into it, and I think we'll probably look into it before the end of this here broadcast because I think you'll find it to be crucial and perhaps very similar to the BS that people are saying all around you in a political sense, perhaps. But like I was saying, it's coronavirus. Seems that everybody's got it. Even tigers got it. Cats and dogs got it, and dog parks were shut down. People are, I don't know that they're very scared of the virus necessarily, but half of the people at Target today were wearing masks and stuff like that. And I know I'm supposed to wear a mask when I go to work and stuff, and perhaps that's for the best, right? At the same time, let's not shut down the economy. Here's the thing that was interesting. It's only a side note, but I thought I'd bring it up. Look, 2 children hospitalized after eating THC candy from a food bank because people at a food bank can't read or anything. You know, it's interesting. It's like people at a food bank can't read or anything because, like, if it's got a warning that says, dude, keep out of reach of children. Well, keep out of reach of children and animals. And so it's like, well, I guess can't read, or you can't even recognize the picture because it's, that looks like a warning. Either that or just, taking the candy and not even giving a dang, and you're just, you're just giving it out. Meanwhile, it's kind of funny, like somebody out there is like wondering where the hell their stash of Nerds Rope THC has gone. I mean, what in the world is that about? THC Nerd Rope? It's like, dude, this isn't a nerd rope. You're supposed to be eating it for a long time. Can you imagine the THC? It's like every time you gobble some more down of your nerd rope, you're traveling down a rope of just mysticism and stuff like that into an out of body experience, basically, towards the end of this nerd's rope. And so, 2 children hospitalized, as you would imagine, from eating the THC candy, in which nobody could read. Like, nobody at the food bank read it. No, nobody's parents read it. Nobody did nothing, right? Meanwhile, somebody's missing their stash. Either they gave it away themselves or like their meddling parents came in and took all their candy. Meanwhile, they didn't even realize. And they gave it to charity. See, that's what you get for giving to charity. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. Trump is killing his own supporters. It's gotten to this. Meanwhile, this guy, behind the mask. See, this might open up a lot of conspiracy theories, but doesn't he look a lot like Nicholas Cruz? Nicholas Cruz on the outside. Anyways, Trump is killing his own supporters. Even White House insiders know it. Now, this is another example of a never-ending list of where so-called whistleblowers out there, but they remain completely anonymous, like Q anonymous. Just okay, it's not nobody, but somebody said this, blah 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 about the White House, and he's killing his own supporters. I can't even believe it. It's like there's people out there so sick and twisted that they would want Donald Trump to kill his own supporters, right? Or they hate Donald Trump supporters, and so they would find that delightful if that were to happen. Trump is killing his own supporters. I don't know what they mean by saying that. Look, a plague is raging, and the president is leaving the heartlands of the blue collar voters exposed. I would just like to mention, real briefly, that as far as diseases go, probably shouldn't be expecting the president to come and wash your hands for you and conduct your life throughout this particular incident. It would be nice if the president did some things, and it seems like he's doing a lot of things. He's doing as much as he can. And to say that he's killing his own supporters and that somehow, some way, even though it doesn't seem possible, he's going out of his way to expose his own supporters, and he's going to kill them. To the point is, you're leading me to believe that it's only Donald Trump supporters that's going to die, and then magically y'all going to have your election in which you put Joe Biden in. And it's ridiculous, and it's all part of the plan that's kind of leading up to all sort of calamity. Um, in this particular election cycle. We're going to talk about that before we get out of here, but I just wanted to take a look at these other screenshots real quick. It is not clear where the film originated. Tobacco smoking monkeys, and shout out to Brenda out there, Rabbi Brenda. We look forward. I wonder if we're even online. And if we are online, I wonder if we have audio and stuff. It's real hard to tell when it's nobody online watching and stuff. But, God bless you out there. I know some people's going to come out to the recording, and I appreciate y'all and stuff. I want to get y'all's feedback. All right, but I want to talk about these here monkeys because it's definitely a situation that is being pondered, and I think people are growing more and more concerned about it here in these circles. It's the tobacco smoking monkeys and apes as well. But that's nothing new. See, the addiction often starts when animals pick up and smoke discarded cigarette butts. Alright, so we're diving down a little rabbit hole, and let me be the first one to say that this is fake. Entirely fake. Meanwhile, there's an element of truth to it, alright? And in that there are monkeys out there who do smoke cigarettes, right? And you might be astounded by that, but when you really think about it, monkeys are a lot like us. I mean, they're more like us than, say, dogs are necessarily when it comes to breathing, when it comes to drinking, for example. Right? When it comes to, like, ingesting, like a dog would never, it'd be very rare to find a dog who likes to breathe in smoke and stuff like that. Right? But monkeys, they're kind of like humans in that sense. And they got the fingers and stuff that do it. So, okay. See, the addiction often starts when animals pick up and smoke discarded cigarette butts, right? I'm not saying it's fake that monkeys smoke cigarettes out there sometimes. Surely they do. And typically it is for the amusement or like the education, if you will, of people around them. Okay? But what they said is entirely fake, right? And dastardly, I'd say. It's just another example of people going out of their way to lie and manipulate and deceive in order to make money, right? Or get paid by somebody to write about this stuff, right? Meanwhile, the whole idea is, monkeys do smoke. Some of them do smoke. And is that any of my business? Up until today, it has not been any of my business, right? But like I said, if you go down to the bottom right here, the addiction often starts when animals pick up and smoke discarded cigarette butts. That is not the case, right? And, honestly, that is a little bit, okay, wouldn't that be totally irresponsible and disrespectful even? It's like, for example, monkeys are in the monkey cages, right? Not a lot of human beings are in there. Who else would be in there? In the monkey cages. Let's think about it hypothetically, but in any situation, in the zoos or whatever, who's going to be in there? The zookeeper, right? Maybe they're smoking cigarettes. You feel like they would be respectful enough to put out their cigarettes even, right? After when they're done smoking inside the monkey cage. Either that or people are going to the zoo and honestly smoking the cigarettes. That's the only other way it could happen is smoking the cigarettes and then flicking them inside the monkey cage, dude. And isn't that totally disrespectful? But some monkeys, if that was the case, they'd go and pick up the lit cigarette and start smoking it, because I'm here to tell you, none of these monkeys own lighters. And I can't even believe that I can't even believe it, that we're saying these words. But I need to stress this, that none of these monkeys own lighters or own match books. It's like they can't light. Where are they getting fire from? How are they lighting these cigarettes? You're lying. That's some damn liars. It's so weird that you lie about this. Like in October 2016, a video showing a chimpanzee lighting and smoking a cigarette at a zoo in Pyongyang, and they got everything to be able to do it. They got the thumbs and they work and everything. They breathe in just like humans would do. And so they took up smoking, right? Over there in Pyongyang, North Korea, it went viral. Can you imagine just like sitting around with a chimpanzee smoking cigarettes in North Korea? As officials claim that she smoked a pack a day, all right? And so the coronavirus chimp silent super spreaders risk wiping out world's greatest ape population. I can't even believe. So they at first they were just talking about the epidemic of addiction, considering monkeys and their addiction to tobacco. Meanwhile, it's all human enabled, every last bit of it. None of these monkeys have any money to buy lighters and matchbooks. Right? There's a reason why monkeys aren't creating bonfires and stuff out there, right? It's not in their nature. And you're importing it into their culture. And then you turn around and you're writing down news articles about this stuff like it's, like it's something that we can do anything about. Of course we can't. The animal seems to be transfixed with smoking a cigarette as the excited voices of a French man and woman and child can be heard to comment. As I would imagine. I gotta admit, it's like if I had to guess anywhere in Europe where monkeys and stuff are smoking cigarettes, I would say France. Alright? I don't know if that makes me racist. Midway through the clip, the animal takes puffs while holds the cigarette. And so this is written by like basically someone who's Asian or someone who's got very broken, maybe a French person. It's got very broken English, and so it holds the cigarette between its index fingers. And I doubt that that's true too, right? You don't even know what index fingers are, right? That would be your pointer fingers. So you can imagine a monkey holding a cigarette with both of his pointer fingers. That would look stupid. He's probably holding it like how cigarette smokers do. It's between his index fingers before putting it down to scratch his head and play with that stick. He then picks it back up and repositions himself. So it's just like, besides the monkey smoking, it's the most mundane description of things happening. So boring. He says he then picks it back up and repositions himself several times before moving to a corner where he takes deep drags and exhales smoke from his nose and mouth like a seasoned smoker. And I will say, for seasoned smokers out there, there's something to it, and it feels good, right? And a lot of people out there might wonder themselves, well, why do people smoke? Isn't it so bad? Isn't it so bad for you? Well, yeah, maybe it is in some senses, but in other senses, it's quite good. Like, for example, it feels good, right? You can almost compare it to drinking a warm bowl of soup, if you will. Something warm going up in you, coating your insides with warmth, especially say like during the winter time. What I'm talking about feels good, right? And I wouldn't suggest for anyone to start smoking. It doesn't really make sense. But if you already are smoking, I'm not going to tell you to not smoke. Even if you are some of these monkeys, the government, they have tested less than 2,000 people, of which 110 were confirmed cases. I don't know what you're talking about. I thought we were talking about monkey smoking. Alright, so I don't know. South China Morning Post reports Cambodia's coronavirus cases have spiked, forcing the government to ban travelers from countries including the US and Italy, unfortunately. And the government has tested less than 2,000 people. And I don't know, I thought they were talking about monkeys. Look, see, it's like in the same damn article. They don't even know what they're talking about, but here's a picture. And I don't put it past people to give. See, that one actually looks photoshopped. Either that or that's a pretty small monkey who's smoking that cigarette. That must be a pretty damn small, small monkey. He's smoking a fat ass cigarette, like as though it's a cigar to him. That's an interesting. If you go to France or whatever, you could probably see that. It takes a puff of a cigarette. I don't know if this is necessarily a problem, necessarily. I don't necessarily see no victims to this, necessarily. Although I do gotta say, monkeys probably wouldn't be smoking if it wasn't for the help of human beings. Since it seems that as worried humans panic over the pandemic unfolding around them, their stress has rubbed off on monkeys, who are reaching for the smokes. And it comes, see, that's why it's all mixed up. That's why they're talking about. So, how the coronavirus has led to all sort of monkey addiction to smoking cigarettes. Okay, so in all sort of untold ways, this is becoming, and not only that, I'm sure a monkey can get, it's like monkeys might even be talking amongst themselves about whether or not they might be at risk for getting coronavirus. And monkeys might, and apes as well, might be talking to themselves and getting so stressed out over whether or not they're going to get the coronavirus. They know tigers from down the way have been getting coronavirus, and they're thinking to themselves, oh man, I might get it. And they start chain smoking cigarettes. And meanwhile, on a little bit more of a darker note, I noticed that there's somebody up in the building. I want to acknowledge you. We're talking about monkeys smoking and how somehow the coronavirus has only exacerbated this situation. And monkeys and chips have failed to kick the habit as entertained visitors are seen to laugh as the animals spark up amid the pandemic. See, in certain zoos, they're claiming that this is happening and stuff. And can you imagine a situation? They may as well be lying, but they're probably telling semi-truth here. That in certain zoos, people are laughing and giggling at the monkeys who supposedly are so stressed out from the coronavirus that they're chain smoking cigarettes, and people are laughing, just standing there laughing and giggling. And that's the thing about it, that doesn't even make sense, because if the people around are at the zoo, for example, they're perhaps having a good time and not even stressed out about the coronavirus. Why would the monkeys then be? See, there's a million questions that'll go unanswered about this here fake news. Meanwhile, people want to tie in the most strangest and wild things to this here coronavirus. They be blaming it. Meanwhile, at the end of the day, just as it almost infers, it's human beings who are responsible for all these monkeys smoking. I'm not the one out here saying that monkeys ain't smoking. Yeah, monkeys are smoking. But even worse than that, I heard a long time ago that they had pigs smoking, for example. And monkeys is one thing, because you could teach them how to use a lighter and make it their own decision and let a monkey just do what a monkey do, right? And hopefully they won't be throwing poop at each other and stuff. If they wanted, if that was the trade-off, then I would say hand them a pack of cigarettes and stuff. In fact, tell them to get a job, because who's going to pay for all these here cigarettes? Okay, but even back in my day, I remember in elementary school. I'm gonna share with y'all on a personal note. A long time ago, people were telling us not to smoke and stuff, back in school, like they might have done for y'all. And one time they actually came and I believe they produced a pig lung, and they didn't let the children touch it. Like nobody was touching it, but they pulled it out and were like, look here, y'all, it's a pig lung. It was all dissected kind of like how a frog would be like in science class or something. And they pulled it out and they're like, look how black it is. It's caked with tobacco, with a tar from the tobacco cigarettes. Oh man, see, I always get messages during the broadcast, dude. Oh man, I'll answer that later. They're asking me about isolating. They're asking me if I was isolating. Yeah, I've been isolating actually for years now, so. Alright, I was doing it well in preparation for this here virus. But like I was saying in my story, and this is my elementary school, so we're talking about 20 some odd years ago. They brought in this pig lung and they were like, look, dude, this pig had been smoking tobacco. See, what they didn't explain to us, they brought us this black pig lung. They were like, look, this pig was smoking and this is what happened to his lung. Look, and then it's supposed to deter you from smoking. Okay, and that's the intent, if you will. Right? You can imagine that would be the intent. Meanwhile, if you really think about it, and we weren't asking too many questions as elementary school students or whatever, maybe going on to high school, or not high school, but middle school, we might have been like 5th grade. We didn't ask questions necessarily, Wait, can you imagine the situation of people force feeding smoke into the lungs of a pig? All right, you cannot tell me that these pigs, like, at the first couple of times, like, these pigs aren't kind of freaking out when you're pouring smoke down their lungs. It's just like a mammalic reaction that they would freak out, just like a dog might freak out in realizing they're being deprived of oxygen. It's almost like they're being choked. How y'all? And so we didn't even ask the question. All these scientists out there, you're like pouring smoke down a pig's lungs just to prove a point to us? Little kids? It seems outrageous, dude. Like, it seems criminal. I don't know. I know there's no law against that, but that's kind of messed up, isn't it? It's one thing to let monkeys smoke. Having pig smoke is a complete different other thing. And I would kind of debate you, and I would argue with you that a monkey, you give it its own free will, if you will, if you're gonna trust a monkey with lighters and matchbooks, and I don't think you should. But if you're going to, I guess, let them light their own cigarettes. Meanwhile, it's typically people probably lighting cigarettes and throwing them at the monkey, and then they pick it up off the ground and start smoking it because they're a dang monkey. It's kind of ridiculous. All right. All right. I don't know what's the moral of the story necessarily. I'm just saying when it comes to the scientists, and when you consider like maybe pigs' lungs, you'd imagine out of all the mammals that pigs' lungs in particular would not be accustomed to taking in smoke, right? You could consider that monkeys have been like a human entertainment for a long, long time, and probably for hundreds of years, monkeys have been smoking tobacco. You can imagine that that's true. But certainly pigs have not been smoking tobacco. That's pretty messed up. Alright, so just to give you a visual, we wanted to go on Daily Star. We would go on there right now. It's just that it's a complete nightmare if you to go on there. Like they have all these pop-ups and stuff. I'll never be able to like read through it with all these pop-ups coming up. So that's what they were talking about. And they got visuals. They got visuals. Here's another little thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into some of the what we mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, because we do got to get out of here. I'll probably get out of here. We're gonna wind it down, right? Shout out to the person up in the building. I'll keep an eye on the comments and stuff, So like, if you have something that you want to touch upon before we get out of here, and you think it'll be crucial, and you think that it'll benefit the people who come in through the recording, then I encourage you to do so. All right, but in the meantime, the headline reads, U.S. dairy farmers dumping milk as pandemic upends food markets. Now, I don't want to get you scared. I do not want to get you all worked up, panicked, or frazzled. And, I don't want you to get all loose and sleep over this necessarily. But I want you, if you haven't already considered, to consider, because I'm suggesting that it will happen, consider that you're going to find that the food shortages that you're experiencing now are going to increase, right? And it's going to become harder and stuff. If you haven't already started, I don't, yeah, of course you have, but you're definitely thinking about more shopping strategically. If you do shop for groceries and stuff, as far as eating more strategically, and instead of buying what it is like that you would need for the week, like people typically did, you'd have to buy it when you see it. If it's there, you gotta buy it. Buy as much as you can buy, whatever's the limit, and they will be limiting it. And buy it because you don't know when you're gonna see it the next time. All right, and that's going to become more and more normal. And that doesn't make me feel good to say that. Like, I'm not like, oh, y'all are going to have to experience this. No, I'm going to experience it too, and it's going to be kind of messed up, dude. You might say, well, you're being all negative and you're just not being positive. No, that is like on the positive note. Like, if as going through this, no matter what, best case scenario, we're going to see the supply chain break down even further. And I'm pretty well going to guarantee it for you. And at the same time, there's complications. See, a supply chain, and a lot of people already figured this out, but for those out there who maybe just be starting out, it's actually very crucial, right? And when you get disturbances, even sometimes small disturbances, a lot of people go without. as far as supply chains. And then certain supply chains, like a chain reaction to other supply chains, they'll affect the, it's like cogs in a machine. Like one messes up, and guess what? The other one's going to mess up eventually. All right, especially if they couldn't predict it. And all sort of wild, different, random things are going to happen. And so people are just going to find it very hard to predict what's going to happen. And so, since companies don't exactly keep just huge stockpiles on reserve of the products that they use to create the products that they make, they're going to find, of course, there's going to be pauses and delays on the supply chains, and certain people are going to get held up for this and that. And somehow, some way, you're not going to have toilet paper when you look for it. Or actually, toilet paper is going to wind up coming back. The actual real concern is going to be the food. It's going to be food shortages. I predict that at a certain point, toilet paper products will be back to normal, right? But the food is what you're probably going to have to think about. And I just wanted to bring that up. Meanwhile, the supply chain is very complex and stuff, and people deal with certain people. It's not like you can create, say, thousands of gallons of milk, for example, and just sit out front and distribute it to everybody, right? And it used to be we had a totally different milk system here in America way before my time, in which you had a milk delivery man, and typically that's not what happens. We do have a new milkman here in San Antonio, but that's a total different note. Typically, we don't have, obviously, okay, grocery stores. And most places do. They have grocery stores in which they have these places. And those grocery stores, they make deals with farmers who, they buy the milk up, right? And in different other scenarios, restaurants, especially when you come to San Antonio, it's probably the world capital of diabetes and eat out restaurants, right? We got a lot of them, right? We love it. So all those people make certain deals, and it's not like when you come to these restaurants, they're not going to the grocery store and picking up the milk that they need for the day. They have contracts, they have all sort of complexity in their supply chains where they have on reserve, and sometimes they buy months and months in advance. They'll be buying supplies, this and that they'll need to put together their restaurant products, right? And so, long story short, that's what's happening right there. See, there's certain U.S. farmers who are dedicated directly to those restaurants, and the restaurants need them dedicated. They need those farmers dedicated so that they have a solid, reliable source for their product that they will need by the thousands of gallons, probably. You know what I'm saying? So they work that all out beforehand. All sort of meetings are done and stuff like that. People work out deals and stuff. Okay, so now that the restaurants are mainly closed or they're doing terrible business, and that's going to change the landscape of restaurants, as we mentioned. It's likely to change the landscape, and not for the better. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But in the meantime, they're doing a lot less business, and so for their milk products and this and that, for example, they're not using all those products. They can't buy them because they don't have the money, because they don't have the customers. The supply chain's breaking down. So now these dairy farmers, even though there's fixing to be shortages, the grocery stores, they can't buy up everybody's milk because they already got contracts with certain other farmers for the milk. So they don't have all the money in the world to buy everybody's milk. So the milk basically has nowhere to go. And it's by the thousands of gallons. Certain farmers are dumping out just thousands of gallons. It's going, and so they might have like a little bit of insurance, but they're not going to reap the benefits of the profits that they were looking forward to this year. All them profits going straight down into the soil, basically. And isn't that that's kind of a terrible, and that's right there. When we focus on that probably, I would imagine, would be a big aspect to the changing of the landscape, especially if you had a community or a country of people who had any sense at all. You would see and you would experience the food shortages later, to include the milk, all right, and eggs and things of that nature. You're going to experience the shortages, all right, so you're going to feel that. And meanwhile, you're going to be able to look only a couple months before that and see that there's farmers out there just dumping out thousands of gallons of milk and and perhaps like breaking all sort of eggs, perhaps thousands and thousands of eggs because they can't sell them. And so you see that, like, in a business model sense, you see how that broke down and it didn't serve us at all, and in fact was disastrous, right? And there's been other countries throughout history that have experienced the same thing, in which all sort of food could be had, but it's not going to be had, and people are going to go without, and perhaps even starve sometimes, right? Find it very hard to find food. So we're going to be looking forward to that sort of situation, and that's best case scenario going forward. All right. And so we're going to look at that. And like I say, changes the landscape a little bit, because if the people did have any sort of sense, and we got Savannah Hernandez there at the bottom. She's actually not part of it, but she's part of the screenshot, I guess. The thing is, we'll have to think about that. If they had any sort of sense, for example, we're not going to spend all day on it right now, but for example, you can imagine that things would be more localized by necessity, for example, because it's the reason that, just very simply, the reason that they're having to dump all this stuff down is because they got a very centralized system in which big contracts are made and done on a national scale, perhaps, even sometimes on a global scale or a flat earth scale all over the place. And so you had to localize the deals, and people would have to work more close together with, consumers that are in their general region. That way, if you were to have, say, for hypothetically, another breakout pandemic, you'd be able to figure out how to adjust things. For example, you could turn the restaurants, and some restaurants are actually doing this. You could turn those into basically grocery stores and play it real cool as far as social distancing. Meanwhile, everybody still gets the products that they need. Meanwhile, you're not having to dump it all out, because you can figure out, oh, well, okay, it's not working this way. We're gonna work it this way, and we're still gonna make money, and people are still gonna get the product, even though all this calamity is spilling out. Or, oh, we can't take it to this establishment. Well, what about these establishments around? Because things are going to pop up where people are going to need milk. How can we get it to the people directly? How can we get it to the people directly? Well, the only way you could do that is if, like, you broke stuff down to very locally. And I do believe we're going to see those changes, even if people don't like it, maybe. And I think people should like it and should get some sense. But even if they don't like it, I think we might see a lot of these changes. Meanwhile, I do want to point out that small businesses are really getting the brunt of this stuff, because what we got going on, and you might have noticed, is like, big box stores and these big corporations, they'll be left to be stayed open, especially including these grocery stores. They can remain open, so they're getting all the business. And when it comes to these chain restaurants, I would have to venture that it's mostly the big corporate chain restaurants who are most equipped to handle the financial impact of what's been incurred here, because a lot of people lost a lot of money, especially in the food industry, and there's a lot of small business in the food industry. All right. So they would have to think about that going on into the future and change their ways. All right. And not be so vulnerable and susceptible next time. All right. Meanwhile, we got a little rough patch that we're going to go through, probably. All right. Formula One boss, here on a good note, Formula One boss, I guess he's a pit boss, I guess you would say. He fathers a child at 89 years old. All right. And man, that's for anybody out there saying you can't do it, because, like, obviously, if we go back in a biblical sense, you could do it. They said you could do it. So have hope and stuff like that. But if you're a dang perverted old person, then I don't even want to hear about it necessarily. But actually, I didn't even see pictures, or I don't think I have a screenshot of it necessarily. We're gonna talk about those screenshots in a second, but I did actually catch pictures of this guy that they're talking about. This Formula One guy, he looks like Italian. I think he was Italian. Old guy, obviously, 89 years old, and he looks it. He's smoking a cigar and stuff. God bless him. And he's out there hanging. Actually, it's not as though she's it's extremely young. In fact, she's kind of old considering making a baby. It's like 40 something years old. I'd say 44 years old. His wife, or early 40s. And she was a liquor, if you don't mind me saying, all right? So she knew where the money was at. She knew, I mean, she knew what she was getting into. Not only the money, but honestly, he looked like he had some charisma to him. So they're having a baby and stuff. Congratulations out there, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, wild things can happen, all right? And will happen. I expect to see more wild things. I appreciate the two of y'all up in the building, man. I appreciate you. And I want to let you know, so we're winding things down. In fact, we're actually over the time limit, kind of think of it, but we'll stay a little bit longer. All right, because there's a couple things more I want to talk about. Dang, dude. I said we are going to talk about these things before we get out of here, and so I'm going to have to rattle them off. You know, I want to make sure that people know about it. But I do want to show you these screenshots also real briefly too. Look, 5G. Oh my gosh, I don't know if we're supposed to even say that, but 5 blank masks burned over coronavirus fears. 5 blank masks, all right? And you can see right there quite clearly what's going down. I'm not encouraging you to do this, but it does look pretty cool, doesn't it? Just real briefly, I gotta say, you know, on a very simple note, and there's so many complex things about what's going on these days. On a very simple note, the people in any country or any place will have to rise up and demand the burning. And I don't want to be halfway on this. The burning down of these 5G whatever antennas. You invested so much money. Oh, it's the way of the future. Burn down your dang 5G. What you think you're gonna perpetrate on everybody? Oh, what if it has nothing to do? What if it has no ill side effects? I don't care. Burn it down. All right. There's enough people who said that they're concerned about it and cautious about it. And Brenda was telling us a while back that they're trying to sneak these in schools, and then sure enough, I was hearing it from all sort of different other sources as well that they're trying to sneak these in schools while the schools are down, right? Which led to my theory that I brought up yesterday, in which, and just to bring it up again, the kids will go back and fall, right? And wouldn't it be all perfect timing? The kids go back and fall. They got 5G all up in their school. The 5G does things to weaken your immune system, all right? It doesn't give you the disease, but it enables you to get the disease even easier. A huge outbreak happens in the school populace. They say, oh, look, we got to lock down again. We didn't think this would happen. I can't believe this happened. And now everybody's going to get vaccines. That is, if we did get out of the lockdown without the vaccines. Now, the thing is, they're pushing the vaccines. And my sources say that, you know, this Dr. Birx, if you know who I'm talking about, and this Dr. Fauci, that they somehow, some way have affiliations that you would find unsavory, very unsavory. And actually, we're going to talk about that in the next couple of minutes before we get out of here. Like I said, I encourage you to, leave comments as we're getting up out of here. I do want to hear from you, but in the meantime, there's things that we got to touch on. Look at this. Singer Pink tests positive, not for HIVs. We're talking about coronas. Now, I don't know if this is a stock photo or if this is literally a photo of I'm not gonna say names, but of a person who is wanting to look longingly out of a window in order to get photographed looking longingly out of the window for the media. All right, so Pink test positive, good for her. All right, Seinfeld, blah blah blah. Larry David made blah 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 and calling people idiots. I don't know, it might be true. I don't know, it's probably true. These are healthcare facilities being monitored, blah, blah, blah. I think we already talked about these sort of things. Of course, they're talking about food banks. Trust me, we're about to start seeing shortages. They're seeing shortages in the food banks right now. All right. But early in this broadcast, and we're going to wind it down. I wish we spent more time on it, but perhaps we'll spend more time on it on the next go around. But early in the broadcast, I asked everybody out there, and I'll give you a second to think about it right now. What exactly and who exactly is the opposite of Donald Trump? And I think that'll clarify everything for everybody because I know how complicated things can get, and people have different relationships with this and that. And certainly Donald Trump knows everybody in the world. Okay, but let's think to ourselves real quick. And I know it's an opinion-based question, but I want you to think to yourself, who's the very opposite of Donald Trump? You might have a nominee in mind. All right, so we're gonna go back to something that I skipped over way early in the broadcast. Who is the opposite of Donald Trump? The very opposite, the complete opposite, the number one opposite of Donald Trump. And I'll have you know, virus or not, this whole confusion or not, who's the opposite of Donald Trump? It would be this guy. The exact opposite. All right? Because I know you might think of a dirty bum in the ditch and stuff, off pricking people with infected needles or something like that. That would be the opposite of Donald Trump. Not necessarily. I mean, because that is very different from Donald Trump. But I wouldn't say that's the exact opposite when you think about it in the whole scheme of things. That's not the exact opposite of Donald Trump. Because there's something wrong with that person, obviously, but there's something honest about that as well. No, the exact opposite is this guy right here, Bill Gates. We're looking at a screenshot of a story, and by all means, I'm not taking this for gospel or this, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they have a headline right here, and I'm not saying that I know that it happened, but I'm saying that I'm pretty sure it did. All right, and it's actually extremely typical. Like Africa Check, blah blah blah, and they were checking up on this story. Look, Bill Gates didn't tip $5 because he's the son of a woodcutter. His parents are a lawyer and a teacher, and so the rest of the article explains the situation in which Bill Gates supposedly is in Africa, and I'm not saying that this absolutely happened. I'm saying probably it did happen. It's actually very typical. So he's over there in Africa for whatever reason, trying to help everybody, right? We're not going to get too far into it because we got to get up out of here. But he's over there trying to help everybody. But he's eating like a meal with his daughter. He's got a pretty attractive daughter. And anyways, his daughter, according to the story, leaves a $500 tip. Why? Because she has untold amount of money and it doesn't even matter. So just to be nice, according to the story, she leaves a $500 tip, according to the story. And at the same time, Bill Gates, he also tips, which is kind of weird, you know. I mean, he also tips, I guess. I would assume Bill Gates paid for the meal. And so, but he tips even less than $5. And according to the story, the waiter has enough nerve to say, look, she tipped me $500, and you're over here, supposedly one of the richest men in the world, and you only tip $5. I don't get what's happening here. And then according to the story, Bill Gates says, well, in a smug type of a slick way, he says to the waiter, according to the story, he says, well, she's the daughter of the richest man in the world, in order to brag, or one of the richest men in the world. I'm the son of a woodcutter. If you can even believe it. I mean, well, if you know anything about Bill Gates, his father's not a woodcutter by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. If that is a true story, he totally made up the woodcutter part, and just to say whatever he wants. Now, the thing is, maybe Bill Gates never did this, but it is very typical for people like Bill Gates to do that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't put it past him. Right? I'm not saying he did it. I'm saying he's typical that he would do it. All right, so let's get a visual of this Chicken Neck Nelly, as Alex Jones talked about him before, and I like that. I like that name for him, and that is what he is. It is very much just what he is. Chicken Neck Nelly. His neck looks like a chicken neck. But Bill Gates, and I want to talk about him just real briefly before we get up out of here. We only got a couple more minutes to go, but I did want to talk about this, and we're going to talk about this more later, okay, because we're seeing a struggle right now, and it looks like from my sources that the struggle, even though it's behind the scenes and nobody's calling out anybody's names, the struggle is, I've heard people describe it as between mainly Bill Gates and Donald Trump. We're going to talk about it more And in fact, I'll make an exclusive video tomorrow and upload it to BitChute. And I also have another video that I have not uploaded to BitChute, and it's regarding Trapped, the lead singer, Chris Taylor Brown. All right, because I know that you're very excited about that. And I'll upload both those videos to BitChute tomorrow exclusively, and you're not gonna find it on YouTube. All right, in which we're actually gonna get on the nitty gritty. So in the meanwhile, before we get out of here, I want to mention that Bill Gates is the exact opposite of Donald Trump. Right, and the more you think about it, the more you're gonna see just the plain as day opposite. All right, okay, but it seems as though there's a struggle between him, Bill Gates, and Donald Trump, and it's entirely behind the scenes. And I don't think that either one of them would even dare admit it. What's going on here? That's what's going on here, and in that Bill Gates and Bill Gates's constituency, they would love it and plan for it to be that you're not gonna get up out of this lockdown ever. You're not gonna come back to work. You're not gonna create society again until you get this vaccine. And this vaccine, well, they might wait. They might wait before they give it to you, but they've had it for like years. You might call that suspicious. But they're going to pretend like they don't have it. They're developing it right now. And then in the nick of time, they're going to have this vaccine for everybody to take. And that's going to be the only way that people can go to work safely. I'm not taking it regardless. And the thing is, I know there's going to be a lot of people who don't take it, and for good reason. You're the opposite of Donald Trump. And now you see there's a struggle between y'all. And it's very subtle. It's behind the scenes. And I'm seeing it play out in some of these press conferences. And I'm really seeing it. It's not that I'm imagining it. It's definitely a struggle whether or not they're going to admit it. All right. And just to describe it, for example, Donald Trump, although he's playing it cool, Donald Trump's playing it real cool. Because in the whole scheme of things, a vaccine, so many people are carried away with the idea of a vaccine, and they're waiting desperately for a vaccine. So many people that it would be political suicide for Donald Trump, or it'd be very detrimental, to say the very least, if he were to say absolutely not to a vaccine. He can't even afford to use that sort of rhetoric. I'm here to say he couldn't say that. Right. So what he's been saying is like, yeah, okay, we can't. People are working on a vaccine, and I can't wait to see it, and we just can't wait to see it. In the meantime, let's think about the things that we already have at hand. As we've already discussed, we got that hydroxychloroquine, and we got major dosages of zinc, of D3, of major dosages of vitamin C, and people have been having all sort of success. They've been using risperidone and just all sort of different other drugs too, that we already have. And they're very cheap. They're extremely cheap. We can get them around to everybody, and we're actually having more people produce it now. On emergency status, we're getting these drugs that we already have, not ones that we're inventing, ones we've been had for a long time. We've been time tested, and people know the reactions that you get from these drugs because they've been around for a long time. We've taken these, and we're seeing what we can do with it. And then the disgusting reporters, they come on and they're like, oh, well, what are you, a doctor? What are you saying everybody should do this? And you think you have the answers? And then Donald Trump's like, dude, no, I don't have the answers. But people are having major success with all these interventions. And so in the meantime, while they're conjuring up this here vaccine behind the scenes, how about we just don't die so much right now, because who knows when they're going to come up with this vaccine. Anyways, and so that's the play that Donald Trump's making. Very wise. He's not throwing people like Fauci under the bus, because that would only cause more chaos in this whole situation. So what Donald Trump's playing is very cool, and he's keeping Fauci in, he's keeping Birx in. I think in the back of his mind, he knows, of course, he can't trust these people. And of course, they're in cahoots with a man named Bill Gates, who's the complete opposite of a Donald Trump. And he knows this, but he needs to keep them there, basically, to spout their gibberish and make him look like he's very well-rounded. And he probably is very well-rounded. He's only keeping them there so that he has his eyes on them, basically. And meanwhile, the whole time, even though everybody wants to get him to commit to not only wearing a mask, but they want to have him commit to a vaccine and nothing else, Donald Trump ain't playing that. He ain't playing it. All right, so I do believe you're seeing a struggle between these two. And I gotta say, at the end of the day, I'm not taking this vaccine regardless. You're gonna have to pin me down, just like you've been pinning down people that I've seen on the internet. All right, and it's very bad things to as well. I mean, it's not even just a vaccination, which probably is poisonous, and probably gonna be some time bomb of cancer in your body. And not only that, but it is the mark of the beast, just like it says in the Bible and this and that. Okay, so there's all sort of interventions. We're going to talk about those more as I get more information about what people are being successful about. And I might come out on Wednesday and stuff. No, actually, I probably won't come on live on Wednesday, but I might be putting out exclusives on BitChute and stuff, and I'll be working out how to get the format right on DLive. So Wednesday we're probably gonna skip as being live here on the internet, but Friday we'll probably be back. And meanwhile, there's a doctor, and I've gone way over time, but I'm gonna type in his name right now. If you haven't seen him, you're one of the few who hasn't. All right. So Cameron Kyle Seidel, I guess they're probably gonna like. So a lot of people have been searching him. It's this guy. And it's interesting because he's got a video, and you'll find it on YouTube, in which he's talking about that this disease that he's been experiencing is not exactly just like they were describing to him. And in fact, he's like a lung specialist or whatever, and so he's saying that there's different techniques that need to be implemented pretty much immediately, or people need to consider it across the board, across the nation, and perhaps across the world, as far as in dealing with people with this disease. If in fact you had to put them on ventilators, what this guy was saying was that you might very well be causing major damage to their bodies. If in fact you're dealing with the disease in the way that y'all been dealing with it thus far, because you're just not everybody's confused. He's saying there's actually different methods, because you're actually probably going to damage a whole bunch of people's lungs. And so you're going to have to go about it a different way. And he brought that up. It's very crucial. It's very crucial in these times, especially to get crowdsourcing for information, to get these so-called experts. I mean, if I want to hear it from anybody, I want to hear from a doctor who's in the trenches, like this guy. I don't want to hear from anybody else at all, man, to be honest with you. I don't want to hear about your vaccines necessarily. I mean, if I'm laying over about to die in a bed, perhaps I'll take the vaccine. But you know what I'm saying? Beforehand, there's other things to be done. And that's why people are sharing the information. And just as you would expect on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else, it's ran by Nazis. They're trying to oppress the information in a very just Bond villain, absolute, total criminal, and satanic way, if you don't mind me saying, as we get out of here. It is April the 5th or 6th, one of those days, 2020. And I do got to get out of here and make some money. I am essential, and I'm here to tell you that you're essential. And if you're not working right now, dude, I would suggest that you go to work somehow. I don't know how, but I would suggest you do, or I hope that something happens. I have neighbors and stuff, and they're not going to work. And I'd suggest they start going to work, all right? We need to work on that, all right? Because people will die. The longer this depression, the longer this lockdown continues, people will die. Anyways, I'll holler at y'all. It's April the 6th, 2020.